Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the United States government had just made your life savings illegal. Not worthless, illegal. In 1933, Americans were threatened with 10 years in prison simply for owning gold. Family heirlooms, retirement savings, coins passed down for generations, all ordered to be surrendered, or else. And here's the twist. After forcing citizens to hand over their gold at a fixed price, the government secretly raised its value, instantly profiting while ordinary Americans lost everything. This wasn't a robbery by criminals. It was written into law by the President of the United States. And what happened next changed the rules of money forever. Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the very thing your family saved for generations, the gold coins tucked away in drawers, the bars hidden in safes, the certificates stored in envelopes, had been transformed overnight into contraband, as illegal as smuggling narcotics, and punishable by a decade in prison. This wasn't fiction, it wasn't rumor, and it wasn't the plot of a dystopian film. It happened in the United States of America in 1933, when the government, driven by desperation and drowning in economic chaos, issued a command that still shocks people today. Ordinary citizens could no longer legally own gold. Not trade it, not exchange it, not even keep it. Just possession itself became a crime. And to understand how a nation built on property rights and personal liberty could pivot so sharply against its own people, you need to step back into the darkest days of the Great Depression, when America was unraveling and the foundations of the financial world were cracking beneath the feet of millions. Banks were dropping like dominoes. Unemployment soared to 25%, factories rusted idle, and the dollar, then tied firmly to gold, was losing credibility as terrified depositors rushed to withdraw actual gold from bank vaults. Back then, every dollar bill was a claim ticket for real metal, $20.67 per ounce, guaranteed by law. But when people no longer believed in paper promises, they demanded the gold itself, draining the reserves that kept the system alive. The threat was existential. If the banks ran out of gold, the entire financial structure could collapse. Enter Franklin D. Roosevelt, newly sworn in as president in March 1933, facing a situation so dire that conventional solutions seemed meaningless. Within a month, he would sign one of the most extraordinary executive orders in American history, Executive Order 6102. Its message was blunt. Citizens were commanded to turn in their gold, coins, bars, and even gold certificates to any bank or Federal Reserve branch. In exchange, they would receive paper dollars at the government's fixed rate. Anyone who refused risked a $10,000 fine, which would be the equivalent of hundreds of thousands today, and up to 10 years in federal prison. Imagine the fear in that moment. People carrying bags of family heirlooms to banks, coins passed down for generations handed over under threat, the quiet humiliation of surrendering the very asset they believed would protect their families in the worst times. Some hid their gold in fields, walls, and barns. Others melted coins into objects to disguise them. But most complied because they had no choice. And just when Americans thought the ordeal was over, the true shock arrived. In January 1934, less than a year after confiscating the public's gold, the government revalued gold from $20.67 to $35 an ounce under the Gold Reserve Act. Overnight, the gold it had seized jumped nearly 70% in value. Citizens who had surrendered wealth at the old price suddenly realized that the government had captured enormous instant profit at their expense. It wasn't merely a policy. It was a massive wealth transfer from citizens to the state. The administration justified its actions as necessary for stabilizing the financial system, boosting confidence, and giving the government the ability to expand the money supply during an unprecedented crisis. But to millions of Americans, it was legalized theft, a violation of property rights on a national scale. The courts became the next battlefield. Countless loans and contracts from the era were written with gold clauses, requiring repayment in gold or its equivalent. When the government voided those clauses by removing gold from circulation and devaluing the dollar, creditors sued, claiming the government was rewriting private agreements and violating constitutional protections. The legal war culminated in the famous Gold Clause cases of 1935, and in a razor-thin 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court upheld the government's actions, setting a precedent that still reverberates today. When national survival is at stake, the government can change the rules of money, override contracts, and seize assets in the name of the public good. But beneath the legal battles lay a deeper transformation. By removing gold from citizens' hands and increasing its official price, the Roosevelt administration severed the direct tie between Americans and their money. The gold standard, a system that had anchored currency to something tangible, was broken. From that moment forward, the value of money rested not on redeemability, but on government decree. And while the government and banking system gained stability, ordinary people bore the cost. Generational savings evaporated. The security people thought they had stored in gold dissolved into paper dollars that immediately lost purchasing power through devaluation. Wealth moved upward, into government reserves, into the Federal Reserve's control, and indirectly into the hands of financial institutions that now stood on firmer ground. Meanwhile, the well-connected and wealthy had options the average American did not. Some transferred gold overseas in time. Others purchased categories exempt from confiscation. Ordinary workers, farmers, and families had no such escape routes. It was a top-down restructuring of wealth, executed through law. And the implications stretched far beyond 1933. Because once the government proved it could rewrite the rules of money in an emergency, that power would become a permanent feature of the financial system. Fast forward through history, and you see the pattern repeating in new forms. In 2008, the government didn't seize gold. It seized the future earnings of taxpayers to bail out financial institutions. In Cyprus in 2013, bank accounts themselves were tapped to rescue the financial system. During the 2020 pandemic, trillions of newly created dollars flowed into the economy, lifting asset prices far faster than wages and silently draining the purchasing power of ordinary people through inflation. And inflation, make no mistake, is simply confiscation at a slower speed. You don't see armed officers demanding your assets. Instead, the money in your pocket loses its value year after year, eroding your savings without a single bullet fired or a single door kicked in. This is the modern form of wealth extraction, subtle, silent, yet devastating. The story of 1933 isn't a relic. It's a warning. It teaches that when the financial system is under threat, governments will always choose preservation of the system over preservation of individual wealth. That the rules of money are not fixed, they bend under pressure. That assets you believe are safe can become illegal overnight. And that trust in a system built on paper is fragile, dependent not on redeemable value but on confidence. Confidence that can vanish without warning. So what does this mean today? It means true financial resilience does not come from blind faith in institutions. It comes from understanding history, recognizing patterns, and diversifying into assets and skills that cannot be erased by the stroke of a pen. It means remembering that governments act in their own interest when crises strike, and that believing it could never happen again is the most dangerous belief of all. When America seized its citizens' gold, it called it patriotism. It called it protection. But for millions, it was a painful lesson in how quickly the definition of legal can change, and how fragile personal wealth becomes when the rules of money are rewritten. History may not repeat perfectly, but it whispers. And if you listen closely enough, it's telling you exactly what to watch for. If this gave you a deeper understanding of how power and money intersect, and how those lessons from the past still shape your financial reality today, subscribe for more. Because history doesn't just tell stories. It tells warnings. And I'll show you where to find them.